Welcome to Slash Forward. In this episode, we're going to floss our way through an island massacre with the film Battle Royale. This is also the last video where you can enter the 10,000 subscriber giveaway, so be sure to check out the rules of entry at the end. Let's get to it. We open on some written exposition about the Battle Royale Act, something we'll come back to several times but without much more explanation provided. Basically, due to a fear of the weakening of younger generations, random classes of ne'er-do-wells are entered into a fight to the death, ensuring that only the cream of the youthful crop rises to the top. We then catch up with how things started for our protagonist, Shua. His father hung himself nearby an encouraging scroll, letting Shua know that he can do better. This results in him taking residence at a boarding school where the kids are wilding out, refusing to attend their classes and slashing their teachers' buttocks in the hallway, because all they really want to do is shoot some hoops, as the kids say. And on this positive note, the compulsory education of the Class B students comes to an end. They playfully take a bus ride on their final school trip, where Noriko offers up her cookies to her crush Shua and his bestie Nobu, and they all relax as the ride seems to go on into eternity. But Shua awakes to discover that while he fell asleep naturally, the rest of the gang's been gassed, and he gets put out unnaturally for the remainder of the trip. We learn this to be as effective as the gas, because the students all begin to wake up at about the same time in an unfamiliar darkened classroom. They can't ascertain if this is bad though, because they've all been outfitted with cool new apple collars. But then a well-lit helicopter touches down outside and Instructor Kitano is escorted in, confirming the situation as bad. He announces that he's taking over their class again and introduces them to two transfer students, Kawada and Yutaka, and then schools them all on the BR Act, something about which they are all ignorant, due to the downfall of society, of course. Amid the mild protestations, they learn there's a new pedagogy being employed here, and it is not student-focused. He explains Battle Royale is a deathmatch until only one survivor remains, and feeds them a steaming plate of their own incredulity by revealing the body of their teacher, who opposed the selection of their class for the program. Then, like a true substitute, he pops in a video explaining the remainder of the rules. They'll be battling on a deserted island. The punishment for whispering is a knife to the frontal lobe. There are danger zones to steer clear of, and their locations and vitals are monitored through their collars, which can also explode if their bureaucratic masters so choose. To continue to drive these points home, he makes an example of Nobu, just so no one doubts the reality of their situation. The final rule is that they don't have a winner after 3 days, everyone dies. During the Q&A portion of the presentation, they learn that they were chosen by random lottery, and that the program is a result of the Utes too freely mocking their elders and being generally ill-prepared for real life. So suck it, Zoomers. They're then provided survival packs with a random weapon inside and called to file out one by one. Shua heads out with the intention of waiting for Noriko, but then a classmate stumbles out who initially appears to have had some trouble getting her bow loaded. Then we actually learn that some turd is camping the spawn point. Luckily, they manage to slip away as their classmates get acclimated to the new violence. After finding some cover, they learn they drew short straws, only armed with a pot lid and a pair of binoculars. We find out via flashback that based on Noriko's typical school experience, she's not particularly trusting of her other classmates, and with Nobu dead, this leaves them to go duos and hope they live long enough to figure out a way out of this. Elsewhere on the island, we find a coalition of students who have taken to questioning Yutaka under the assumption that he must be some sort of double agent, but despite their guns, they still approach it as though it may just be a game. Yutaka corrects them on this error by acquiring the Uzi and mowing them all down, so they can spend their last few moments of life comforted in the assurance of their new knowledge. We then find another young duo making their way to the water's edge as cracks of gunfire ring out across the island. They're not deluded about the reality of the situation, and determined to keep their hands clean, they take a lover's leap off the cliff face. Elsewhere, in a shack, Mitsuko announces herself to Megumi. She checks out her stash to see what she's got, and we learn that she, as well, has accepted the reality of the situation. However, determined not to die like a lamb, she chooses a different path. Bright and early the next day, Kitano's voice blares through the loudspeakers, and he shares an accounting of those who died the prior day, as well as identifying the danger zones for the next few hours. Unfortunately, while heading for safer ground, they're attacked by Oki. Luckily, he only has a small melee weapon, and in the course of the scuffle, falls victim to a self-inflicted wound, allowing Shua's virgin conscience to remain white as the driven snow. But the sounds of the struggle start drawing out the gun boys, who are looking for target practice. However, Kawada, seeing they pose no threat with their pathetic weapons, shows them mercy. They're also distracted by a more pressing issue. A duo of young ladies with good intentions are calling out from a nearby hilltop, requesting a truce and inviting everyone within earshot to congregate so they can try to figure things out. Kawada insists they keep low and stay away from the negative attention they're likely to attract. And sure enough, they are soon gunned down at close range and in full view of their peers. Kawada then provides a nugget of wisdom, suggesting they either kill themselves now or continue on without trusting anyone they come across, and then bids them good day. Before they know it, it's lunchtime, at which point the command post takes to calling out the upcoming danger zones for them to mark on their maps. Back at the kill shack, we discover that Hirono's been keeping an eye out for Mitsuko's return. She found Megumi killed by a blade and suspects Mitsuko's involvement. With that suspicion, and for the prior crime of stealing her man, Hirono's feeling fairly confident in serving up some justified revenge. But Mitsuko possums up before zapping away the gun and turning it on its prior owner, coming out as the victor of the altercation. Back at the water's edge, Noriko's just too famished to continue on, so Shua carries her to the nearby clinic that's marked on the map. When they arrive, the outlook isn't promising, but they soon discover the clinic is actually manned by their personal savior, who happens to be a talented field medic and also once had a job as a short-order cook. Elsewhere, a group of boys lug a generator up some stairs where they intend to set up a command post of their own. These fellows are hoping to find an alternate way off the island, and are still optimistic about the possibility of meeting up with other friends to form a coalition. Then one of the tech boys discovers a mic in the necklaces, so he types out instructions to his bros to go retrieve a variety of chemical ingredients for him. We then take a brief detour to catch up with Chigusa, who's confronted by a young lad who chose to demonstrate his amorous feelings for her by spreading nasty rumors as an expression of his love. Now, with death on their doorstep, he offers to assist her in experiencing carnal lust, so she doesn't have to die as a virgin. But after even the briefest of hesitation, he also then offers to help her die quickly, and in dicking about, accidentally misfires, scarring her face. As punishment, she chases him down and stabs him repeatedly in his sack, before being chased off by Mitsuko. She runs into Hiroki, who she warns about Mitsuko before passing away. Back at the clinic, their host reveals that he was the winner of the game 3 years back, and had found himself in a similar situation where he spent the whole game protecting his young lover, only to be forced to gun her down to prevent being murdered at the end. He was drugged and inserted into their game as a ringer, presumably to keep things rolling, but he claims to know a way off the island and vows to let them know about the secret when the time comes. As they duck for cover due to gunfire, we learn the other transfer student is also a ringer, but one who signed up just for the fun of it, and he does seem to be enjoying gunning down students, although this one was gifted a bulletproof vest. And unfortunately, this fact is discovered when he fails to be humble about it. They select a rendezvous point in case they get split up and are flushed from their clinic stronghold by a grenade and some Uzi spray. Shua tries to draw him off down the beach, but discovers that Yutaka has already outfitted himself with the vest. Luckily, he gets a last-second assist from Hiroki, who follows him into the surf. Meanwhile, the boys return, having raided the island's fertilizer and fuel depot. We discover they're armed with a version of the anarchist's cookbook, except this one appears to be useful, and they all agree to make a pact to take this all the way or split up now. Joe wakes up freshly bandaged inside an old lighthouse, where another small outpost of students has been hiding. We learn through a brief flashback that Hiroki dragged them cakes right in before leaving. He's then filled in on the fate of the students from the morning announcement. Kawada and Nariku are still alive somewhere, but Mitsuko's been working hard all night. Shua wants them all to go to Kawada so they can join the escape, but he himself is barely able to walk. Downstairs, Yuko, having seen the incident with Oki, is having some trust issues and is pondering whether or not to poison his recovery lunch. She decides to go for it while the others try to keep their spirits up under the realization that if they continue to do nothing, they're all gonna die soon. As they discuss the plan to meet with Kawada, Yuka performs a quick taste test and ends up literally puking her guts out. The gang's bubbly cheer, we learn, was a delicate facade as it quickly devolves into a bloody game of Among Us, where the ladies try to ascertain who's sus through violent aggression. In the end, guilty Yuka is left as the sole survivor. Racked with the weight of this guilt, she runs up to the top of the lighthouse and throws herself off. With lunch now over, Shua is left to find his way to the rendezvous point alone. Checking in on that end, we find his two besties getting some rest near an idyllic little hut. When Nariku wakes up, she laments the loss of her normal life before running off into the woods to find Shua. Well, bye! Kawada warns that they're on a highway to the danger zone, and she runs across Mitsuko, who runs off when Kitano arrives. Then Shua shows up, and it's raining. It's all very confusing. Kitano offers his umbrella and walks off. Shua comes to and confirms that he brought a bunch of weapons to offset his general uselessness, and they have a touching moment. Elsewhere, Sugimura calls out for Kurohiki, who pops up to gun him down. He confides that he thought she was kinda cute, and that's why he was looking for her. So she begins to grow despondent about what she's done. But Mitsuko arrives and doesn't let her suffer long. Unfortunately, this is where Mitsuko crosses paths with Yutaka. Despite all of her success and accomplishments, they have a bit of a back and forth in which she performs admirably, but ultimately succumbs to her injuries. After listening to the fruits of their productive day, they opt to head west to see if they can meet up with Mimura, who at that moment is working with the boys on mixing, cooking, Measuring? Guy stuff, you know. They finish up right as Mimura gets into the main system, sending the command post into a panic. But Kitano casually flips the main switch to force a restart. But this was according to plan, of course, and they assume they have about 15 minutes now to blow the school. A nearby noise draws one of them out to joyfully greet who he assumes to be Shua for some reason, and it ends up being Yutaka. A protracted gunfight erupts in which, facing a certain death, Mimura instead opts to engage the explosives on the car. Our trio then arrives and witnesses Yutaka emerge from the flames. He's now blind, but Kawada doesn't realize this until after making a noise, resulting in him taking a few shots before negating the body armor. They then head to the exit point where Kawada teaches them their final lesson, which was really the first lesson: trust no one. Turns out he just wanted to ensure they were the final three before turning on them and securing the win. The command post hears the final shots over their mic system, and Kitano calls the game while the system's down, instructing the soldiers not to do a visual confirmation of the corpses. Then, with no fanfare whatsoever, everyone files out except for Kitano. He's feeling a bit blue now that it's all over because he has no one to go home to, so instead he hangs back to do some of his morning calisthenics, flaunting his athletic abilities right in our faces. As the survivors emerge, we learn this was a double cross, but with an extra surprise because Kitano admits, via the revelation of his art therapy, that he came here for one reason only, and that's to die with Noriko. He encourages her to taste the deliciousness of cold-blooded murder, but Shua steps up to take one for the team. With lessons well learned, we're now looking at three well-adjusted adults ready to go take on the world. Except Kawada, he ends up expiring from his wounds on the back of the ship. And then also, when they reach the mainland, our lovebirds are wanted for murder, forcing them to live the remainder of their lives in hats. But in hats together. I just want to give a huge thank you to everyone who watches and enjoys my videos for 10,000 subscribers. This will be the last video where you can enter the giveaway for a chance to win one of 5 /forward hoodies. All you have to do to enter is like the video and then comment with your guess as to what movies are featured in my original intro.
Repent too fast. Forward into the darkness.
After collecting the final entrants, I'll be doing a drawing and announcing the winners in my March 23rd video. I'd also like to give a huge thanks to my donors memorialized in the Hall of Headshots. Battle Royale was a tough movie to do. It really hops around a lot to try to flesh out all the many characters, which it does a good job of. It keeps the story clipping along, and while we don't get a great idea of the reasoning behind why all of this is going on, it inserts enough comedic elements to indicate there is satire involved here, and this is likely an intentional choice. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to become part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.